Welcome to Wolf's Watch. Today we have Joy Cooper with us. And I'll tell you what, you're going to want to have something to write with. You are going to want to, if I can get my screen to work here. I'm goofing up already. So thank you for being part of Wolf's Watch. Join us, laugh with me, laugh at me, just laugh and have a good time. We're going to have an awesome conversation today with Joy. And I want to see if I can get through this. I've met Joy and I still have a hard time reading this. I've heard her story. You're going to love her story. She's got a lot to talk about as a leader and as someone who has overcome tremendous challenges. And so check this out. The joys and privilege of sharing her experiences as the lone survivor of a fatal plane crash. When others told her she would never walk again, she proved she would be more than that, do more than that. She would dance again. She's an accomplished ballroom dancer. Joy's #1 best-selling author, keynote speaker, operations manager for United Airlines with a master's in aeronautics, and she's a pilot. Her story was featured on CBS TV, and she's been interviewed on top-rated podcasts. I'm so honored to have her on the show today. But one more thing to consider before we bring Joy on. The plane crash broke every extremity. She was not able to move. It was threatening to destroy everything she'd worked for. Only a week after Joy's life-changing crash, a counselor told her she may be afraid to fly again. And she replied, "That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard." That's Joy. I've had a chance to be with her live when she's speaking on stage, and that is so her personality. You're going to love this. And for her, mediocrity is synonymous with failure, and limits are something to be redefined and conquered. Joy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm so glad I got to come on and enjoy your podcast. It's going to be great.
It is. And I had a chance to hear you speak live and felt that you'd be a great connection with our audience. But first, could you tell us some more about your story, your plane crash? I mean, that's unbelievable. Broke every extremity. They said you wouldn't walk again. Holy cow.
Yeah. No, that's not generally what you want to hear after you wake up in a hospital.
No.
You don't want to hear those words. You want to hear, "Yay, you're awake. Now leave." No. So, for me, it started as a beautiful, clear day. I was on vacation with my best friend and her aunt and uncle in Alaska, and we were on this remote glacier-made lake. You couldn't get Wi-Fi signal to save your life. It was amazing time, just kind of enjoying nature and having an amazing trip and hiking and boating and all that stuff. And we were getting ready to fly back. Now, her uncle is a very experienced pilot. He'd been flying for over 20 years. We were at their property, so they had been flying to and from that property multiple times.
Okay.
And he, called on the satellite phone, got the weather briefing. They're like, "Oh, it's good. Clear weather, maybe like 7 statute miles visibility," which for pilot lingo, that's still pretty good. Maybe a little hazy because there was this wildfire 300 some miles away to the west. And it had filled the valley with some haze, but that's about it. It wasn't a big deal. So we thought, all right, it's crystal clear here. We're going back to Anchorage and talking about going to see their loon cam that they had set up and a bunch of these other things, like setting up our trip for the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. And as we entered into this mountain valley, it went from crystal clear to we couldn't see our hand in front of our face. It was so smoky. Apparently wind had kicked up and kicked that smoke into that valley. And we saw pictures later to where from the FAA's weather camera that they had on the mountain, you could see this pine tree maybe 20 feet away. And the picture during the time that we were flying down that valley, you could not see that pine tree, much less the mountain. So we're flying. We're trying to go through this. I'm a pilot also. I'm a private pilot, so I don't have too many hours of practical flying, but I was flying right seat and thinking, okay, well, what can I do to help? Because
so you're in a co-pilot seat.
Yeah, I'm in the co-pilot seat.
Okay.
But I'm thinking he's flown this route probably blind before in the dark, and I'm not too worried about it. And he goes, "All right, you guys just look out the windows for trees." And I'm like, that's not a great way to do collision avoidance. And then the alarms start going off with a terrain, pull up. And he's just clearing the messages and flying slow and steady. And we're all being quiet and trying not to bother him. But he's operating like 1,000,000 miles a second. And all of a sudden, the plane just pops up in the air. Like we were like, gambler's dice in a can all of a sudden. Like it went from super smooth to bouncing around like a bunch of dice, and my door flies open. And so, of course, I reach out and just grab it and shut it, and thinking, this actually happened on my private pilot check ride. I'm used to this. I can hold a door closed. It's the least I can do while he's flying this plane. Unfortunately, that was just the beginning of the tossing problem, and we got stuck in that turbulence, and it basically jackknifed our plane into the mountain. So instead of flying parallel to the mountain, we
Oh
were
my
nosing
gosh.
into the mountain, but we didn't know it because it was so smoky. And so at the very
Right,
last
right.
minute, he just jerks up on the controls because I believe he saw the mountain before I registered that it was a mountain. So he pulled up, and we just went straight up in the air and stalled and fell out of the sky. So anybody who
Mm.
knows what a stall is, it's when you lose airflow and lift under your wings, which means you're falling uncontrollably out of the sky.
So you
The last
literally
thing,
spin like a leaf into the.
yeah, pretty much, you just kind of
Mm.
fall out. Which I've practiced stalls before as a pilot, and you know what that feeling is in the gut. That's where you feel it. It's like, this is not good. And I'm thinking, we stalled. There is no recovery from this. I don't know what's going on, but it was strange because I had like this peace. And I mean, I'm a woman of faith. I'm a Christian, so I feel like it was God saying, "You're gonna be okay," and I just relaxed, which it's completely counterintuitive to what I should be doing. I should have been screaming my dumb head off, but I'm like, I can't do anything. I'm just gonna relax and believe it's all gonna be okay. And the next thing that happened is I woke up and our plane was buried in the side of the mountain. So there was dirt, glass, twisted metal, everything. And I'm thinking we made it back to Anchorage, right? Because my brain hadn't associated what had happened yet. And I thought, oh, we're back in Anchorage. And for some
Are they,
reason, we're watching We Were Soldiers. We're in the middle of Vietnam War and something's going on. But then I was like, there's no Mel Gibson. Where's Mel Gibson? And so, for
wow.
some strange reason, that's what took me out of my brain fog of, this is real life. We're not watching a movie. This is me in the side of a mountain surrounded by poplar branches. It was little poplar shrubs, so it wasn't even trees.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
going, okay, I got to do what I got to do. Like, how am I going to get out of this? What can I do? What's the next step that I need to take right now? Because freaking out isn't going to help anybody. And I'm
Hmm.
a very pragmatic, checklisty sort of a person. And so I switched into that operations manager mode of, how do we get out of this problem? And yeah, it was I looked around and was just like, okay, let me assess what's going on. Let me check on everybody else. And unfortunately, when I turned and looked in the back seat, my best friend, I could see her head was like in the back of the pilot seat. And I yelled at him a couple times, hoping that they were passed out, the same as I was. And unfortunately, of course, they never woke up. So her and her aunt, the blessing in that is they probably didn't know what hit them. So they didn't experience any pain. They might have experienced a little bit of fear, but they didn't have any pain or any concern over anything. It's just gone. And unfortunately, the pilot was still alive, but he was so badly injured that he held on until I got out of there and then passed away. But I just thought, okay, nobody else is going to get help. We're on a mountain. I got to go get help, right? So I lift up my arm and I'm going to push the door open to get out and roll down the mountain. And my bottom half of my arm, like my forearm, just swings freely, like a pendulum. And my elbow had been completely busted
Oh my
and it was
gosh.
held on by just a tiny little piece of skin and just like flapping in the breeze. And I thought, I can't push a door open with this. Like, it's a limp noodle. It's not doing anything. And my brain goes, well, that's your first injury. Tick that one off the box. And I looked at it. It wasn't bleeding much. And so I thought, okay, good. It's not a hazard per se yet. They can
Sure.
fix that. And so I realized, and not many people probably know this, but if you look at your fingers, you can actually initiate those nerves and make them move. And so I'm like staring at my fingers and walked them up the buttons of the windshield and then walked them across the windshield until I could get the top of my arm that wasn't broken around the window frame. And I pulled myself up, trying to pull myself out that door down the mountain to go get help. and it didn't work. I did it like 4 times, and every time it just got more and more painful. And so I thought, I am wearing myself out. If I keep wearing myself out, whenever whoever gets here, it's not going to work. I'm going to be so tired, I'm not going to be able to do my absolute best. And so I thought, we're in the middle of the mountains. We're in the Alaska wilderness. I don't know where we're at because I wasn't familiar with the area. I knew we were in a mountain somewhere, but I could hear the emergency locator transmitter going off. And it just is this light little beep, beep. And so with that going off, I thought, you know what? That's sending the signal to whoever it needs to send the signal to. I'm just going to rest and wait for help to come. So I did what everyone else was going to do in this situation, right? And I leaned over and I took a nap. And because that's,
Wow.
the logical thing to do. And I woke up to a helicopter coming in over the top, just coming over, and then it left. And I'm like, come back.
So it didn't even stop. It went over, but didn't stop.
It hovered over the top and then went back
no.
around the other side. And I thought, well, it's smoky. It's still really smoky. So maybe they're just trying to find me. And sure enough, it came back. And then it left again. And I'm like, you guys better figure this out, because I don't have the patience. And they came back, and then they hovered longer. And so I thought, okay, good. They're dropping somebody in. Okay, I'm just kind of trying to imagine what must be going on and trying to think of what could happen. And then it left. A couple minutes later, I hear footsteps in the leaves. And so I hollered out, and I was just like, help, there's still people alive. Because I'm thinking, they don't know. It probably looks like a pile of metal in here. And they're probably thinking, well, we're just going to tick boxes and say nobody's going to make it and get back out of here. And the guys came in, and I always like to see a man in uniform anyway, but when you're stuck in a plane and that's what you see, it really looks way better. Let me just tell you. So Brian came and walked around the side, and he goes, hi, ma'am. My name is Brian. I'm with the National Guard, and we're going to get you out of here. And I said, okay, great. Well, my name is Joy. The 2 in the back are dead. The pilot's severely injured. I broke my elbow and I broke my wrist. And he looked at me like he didn't know what to do. He was just like,
just that calm, cool, and collected.
Oh yeah. Like,
oh my gosh,
my operations manager brain kicked in, I guess. And so I thought, you know what? It is time for me to do a turnover. It's shift change. These guys are now going to need to be taking charge. Like I did everything I possibly could. And now my goal is going to be to give them the information that they need that'll maybe speed up my recovery, like, or my rescue process, and also let them kind of know what they're getting into real quick, succinct. And so that's what I told him. I'm just like, here's what we've got. And he's like, okay. And I heard his partner in the back, who I met later, his name's Jimmy. And he was in the back taking care of, he's like, the only way we can get her out of here is cut the bolts off the seat. Cut the top off the plane, cut the bolts off the seat. And I'm thinking, well, my brother was a firefighter. And I've watched the demonstrations before where they take the jaws of life and they chop the car into pieces. And so I thought, I've seen this before. And he's like, we're going to have some sparks and I don't have anything to cover you with. And I thought, I do not care. At this point, just get me out of this plane. I can handle a few little burns. It's not a big deal. So I just closed my eyes and turned my head away. And that's the last thing I remember until I guess I was in the ER. And it's like those, those TV shows when you're in the ER and you got lights going and people just talking all over each other. And so it was just like that. Like, I just see super bright lights. And all of a sudden I hear, all right, we got a head laceration. I need 3 staples right here. And I hear this, and I was out. I was gone. So that was like my sign to, I needed to check back out. Some more. Like, I was not supposed to be awake. So that was like my first reintroduction. And what the guys told me later, because I follow up with the National Guard guys a lot. They're part of the 212. They're called pararescuemen. And they jump into the middle of situations that they ought to be in because no one else can get there. And they do amazing rescues like this all over Alaska for civilians, for military, for everybody. And they say they do it a lot, and they are an amazing group of guys.
212. They're called the 212. What again?
They're called pararescuemen.
Pararescuemen.
They call them PJs, parajumpers.
PJs.
Yeah. So the first time they told me that,
pararescuemen. Hey, shout out to you guys in Alaska, guys and gals. Thank you so much. My gosh.
Yeah, they're also part of the
Wow.
210 and the 211. So all three of those come together as far
Hmm.
as pilots, mechanics, and the actual PJs. And yeah, I've been back up to visit them. They're amazing group of guys. But yeah, that's it.
Wow.
So I get to the hospital. Um, one other funny story. Somehow I ended up with my phone in the hospital the next morning or evening, I believe. It was Saturday. So the accident was on Friday night in June of 2019. And I get to the ER, get to ICU about Saturday ish. And I get my phone. And one of my coworkers had texted me, "Hey, what's the password for our schedule?" Because I was in charge of our scheduling. And she was covering for me. So I texted her back the correct password with my broken hand. I don't even know which hand I used. But
Oh my gosh.
I messed up the first time. Like I hit enter before I put the second half in, and so
Hmm.
I sent it twice, and I'm like, man, this is a pain. But I sent it off to her, and it cracks me up every time. I'm like, what was going on in my brain? But I
Yeah.
found out later. I really kind of came to 5 days later because I remember
Mm.
bits and stuff, but it was a lot of medication, lots of surgeries and anesthesia, and I didn't
Yeah.
really kind of wake up until 5 days later, and that's when I found out I had broken my back, and that's why my legs didn't move. I was
Oh.
paralyzed from the waist down, and I had 4 spinal cord tears. I do the Macarena to describe how I broke everything. So I broke my left wrist, right elbow, um, right rib, back, and femur in 2 places on my right femur, and both of my ankles got smushed. So
Good
just
Lord.
imagine doing the Macarena, minus the hips, and that's what broke. So thankfully, I had the best doctors there. They put me all back together. My neurosurgeon never said I wouldn't walk again. He just said, "Wait and see what happens," because it's a
Hmm.
tear versus a cut. And so if it's a cut, he would have said, "No, you're not going to
Yeah.
walk again." But with a tear, he said, "I repaired it. We'll just see what your body does." And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I do dancing. Like that's my hobby. That's my community. I'm gonna dance again. You think I'm not gonna walk? Come on. And he just smiled and walked out. And but other people would come in and be like, "Oh well, you better get used to it. You're never gonna dance again. You're never gonna walk again. Let's get you a wheelchair and a Hoyer lift, which is you put this canvas thing
Hmm.
underneath you, hook you in, and that's how you get in the chair because you're not even strong enough to get yourself in the chair." And I thought, no, this can't be right. Like I don't. It doesn't feel like me. And there was a
Hmm.
lot of readjustment because I did shatter both of my ankles and I do still have neurological problems down there. But 6 weeks later, I was able to like barely move my right big toe. And that to me was like, look, haha, I have movement. It's like
Yeah.
barely moving my big toe, but I'm going to do it. And ended up getting a medivac 6 weeks later and flew again. I mean, I personally didn't fly the thing, but I flew in a plane.
Wait a
This was
minute. Wait a minute. Wait. 6 weeks after all this happened, you're back in a plane.
Yeah. I love flying. Like, if you love
Yes.
something, if you truly love
Well,
something,
yeah.
you you're not gonna let, like, a little bitty plane crash get in the way, are you? Come on.
That's a good point.
No,
And
there
this is I want to share this comment. Earl Browning joined us, and I didn't want to interrupt your story to say hi to Earl. Earl, thanks for being with us. And Earl is so right. Joy's a badass. That is
Yeah.
an understatement. Good Lord.
I mean, it was truly a mixture of, having to be that persona, but then also, like, meeting the people that came around me
Hmm.
in the hospital was just amazing. It came around my family. My mom and sister flew up there, and by the time I woke up, they're like, "Oh, well, all of these people are coming over and bringing stuff," and I'm like, "You don't know anybody in Alaska? Like, I know people from college, you know nobody." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, we do. We met so many people that came up here and just opened their arms and their hearts and just accepted them in there." And I believe that was a huge part
Wow.
of my recovery is people
Yeah.
coming around me, but then also me learning kind of how to reach out for help
Hmm.
because I have always been the independent, I can do it, like sort of a person, but having to learn to reach out for help and recognize those weaknesses and be like, don't be stupid. Like,
Well, that
you
having
have
the
a
people come,
weakness.
around you, being willing to ask for help, and also that mindset of, okay, this is not the way it's going to be.
Hmm.
Were those really the keys to being on the path to recovery so quickly?
I think so. And mindset had a lot to do with it because deep down, I knew I was going to walk again.
Hmm.
And as the time went on, I did have to adjust that because like I do have limitations. There's no denying the fact that I have a spinal cord injury, and like right now, I had to have a surgery a month ago, so that's why I'm sitting on my couch. So I apologize to all of you people, but I have a metal cage around my leg and it needs to stay up. But you have different things that come into your life that are gonna try to discourage you or knock you down. And for me, that was people saying you're never gonna be able to enjoy what you once thought you could enjoy. And you might lose your house because you can be out of work for 2 years. And I'm like, I'm going to be back in work in 2 months. And my boss laughed at me because clearly I had
Oh
a
my gosh.
skewed version because I'm like, this isn't a
Yeah.
big deal. It's just a couple broken bones. I had never broken anything before, so I had no frame of reference. But being able to kind of take that positivity and ground it. So it's something
Hmm.
I like to, I've heard it somewhere and I love it. It's called grounded optimism. And it's where it's like, I understand the problems. There are problems.
Yes.
I have to learn how to use a wheelchair. I have to have another surgery. I have to do different things. But staying optimistic that I am going to walk again. I am
Hmm.
going to be able to do that. I'm going to be able to make my own way. And even if I have to do all these other things in my life, it's going to still be able, I'm going to make it work. It's not going to keep me from my dream. I might have to modify it. I might have to give myself more time and space, but I'm going to be able to still push that out. And so I like to say that's
Yes.
like planning for weaknesses. Like, I know I'm going to be weak. I know I'm going to need more time to get ready to get to work. So plan for
But you
that
did,
instead of
but you didn't
being
accept it
dumb
as
and
a
saying no.
permanent condition either, though. It's like, yes, you're going to be weak. However,
Well, you
there
find
you're
ways to make it not a weakness. So
exactly.
you
And
can't
I
be like,
agree. I
oh,
agree
well,
with
I'm
Earl.
not going to be weak all the time.
A great way to not listen to the naysayers, because
Yeah.
there's always people that'll say you can't do this, shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you gotta
But
sift it
wow.
all out. Like I had one of my therapists said, okay, well, we're gonna get you a wheelchair. You're gonna get measured for it, and here you go. And she, to me, kind of sometimes was a little bit of a naysayer. Like she didn't
Hmm.
believe in me as much as I needed her to. And but she came up. She was like, you know what? You may not need this for the rest of your life. You may not need it after recovery. But say you want to go to the mall with your friends and walk around for a really long time, your endurance is not going to be the same. So you might be able
Mm,
to walk into Aldi and go shopping just fine. But if you want to actually enjoy your life, like you don't want to go into one store and then be so tired that you have to come back out and then all of a sudden your
yeah.
day's ruined. So this is how you use it. You use it as a tool. And so when I realized, okay, a wheelchair or fill in the blank of whatever it is that you're trying to say is a weakness, it's a tool to make me stronger, to make me be able to enjoy the things that I want to be able to enjoy and still be able to be a valuable asset to my friends and to myself versus, sorry guys, I'm too tired, I can't do it. So I have used that frequently. I've also gone to the mall without the wheelchair, but it kind of realizing, okay, I have this weakness,
Hmm.
but also I'm hopeful that I'm going to either get stronger or here's how I'm going to work around it to make it not a weakness. So,
Hmm.
like getting ready to leave takes me almost twice as long now in the morning because it just does. So, I could be 15 minutes late to work and make excuses that are valid, or I can leave 15 minutes earlier and go, this is what I have to do to be able to get this task done, or this is what I have to do to accomplish this project. And that could be delegating to someone who may be better suited for it than I am and stay in the background, or jump
Hmm.
out there and go for it. So, really kind of having that grounded perspective of, yes, I have these limitations, but that's not going to limit me.
But yet, there are like 6,000 questions going through my head right now. One of the things that we had talked about during the pre-show was resilience, which
Hmm.
is hugely important to recovering from trauma. Uh, but it's also important from a leadership perspective in terms of, when in leadership roles, it's easy to kind of get beat down by the stress and disappointments,
Hmm.
and this stuff accumulates, and resilience becomes so important. Could you talk some about your experience with resilience, and have you always been so resilient? Did it build up? Does this experience help you take it to the next level? How did that unfold?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, this experience definitely was kind of like the coup de grace of trials. Like, I know it was in me because you sometimes things you do develop like in the middle of a big problem. but a lot of times it's what's inside of you already that's just getting to be spotlighted. And so I feel like this was kind of just a big thing that kind of fine-tuned and really got to shine on those things. Got to say, hey, you're actually really good at this, and being able to be in incredible amounts of pain, but still be able to smile and calm down the nurses because they're more worried about me than I'm worried about me. And so trying to get them to focus on the actual issue instead of focusing on maybe the emotion or the frustration. I had one nurse, it was towards the end of her shift. The poor thing had been taking care of me all day. And right at the end of her shift, she put my bed down and broke the plug and exposed wires. So, of course, then my bed's broken and I can't move. This is very early in the thing. And so they had to do like this
Mm-hmm.
full body sling thing, lift me out of bed. And then all of a sudden I start spinning in
Yikes.
circles. And I thought it was great because I was like, I am not going to get mad. Yeah, it's an inconvenience. I should be eating dinner right now, not having to go through another 30, possibly 45-minute bed change issue. But she was so upset that she could have hurt me or that she could have caused another problem that I thought she needs to be comforted. She needs to be reaffirmed that she's a great nurse. She just, you know, something happened. And actually, I think another tech had come in and done something and she didn't realize it. So it wasn't her fault. So I thought it's more important for me right now. I'm not hurting. She's not hurting me. It's more important for me to let her know that I am still very positive. I'm okay. She didn't hurt me. Everything's good. So really kind of looking out for what's the most important thing in this situation. Is it me getting mad that I'm inconvenienced, or is it me trying to help her and maybe also do some self-directed care as far as
Mm-hmm.
like, this is what needs to be done, this is how I need to be feeling in this situation, because it was still also a very touchy situation. I had just finished up like 4 pretty much back-to-back surgeries. So it was kind of going through that. This is a really tough time and I have 2 choices. I can get mad, I can get upset, I can let the situation get to me, or I can take control of the situation and see how I can help the rest of my team, which was the nurses and everyone else who came in to help her, be able to switch it out so she can go home and get some rest and come back and do it tomorrow. So it was kind of that mindset of how am I going to react? Am I going to lose
Yeah.
my marbles, or am I going to get all my ducks in a row and reach out and see how I can help the rest of my team get through this?
I want to jump around a little bit because the comment, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard about the you're not going to dance again has stuck in my mind. Have
Oh
you
yeah.
have you danced again?
Oh yeah, I have.
So
I think
now,
that's how I broke the rod in my leg.
oh no,
Yeah, no, so
but
2
when did
years.
now? How long was it before you were able to dance again though?
I went dancing about a little bit, I think it was 2 years after the accident.
Okay,
And I think before that I might have done
nice.
like some mamby-pamby stuff, and I always danced around in my kitchen to just like practice the steps. Even at
Okay,
work, I would put popcorn in the microwave and practice steps because it's really good therapy. But 2 years after, I actually went out to the place that I always used to go dance at, where my
mm-hmm.
community was, where we always went out on Tuesday nights, and we went salsa dancing, salsa and bachata, and it was great.
Wow,
It was so
great.
much fun, and my ankle swelled up and I put ice on it and said, "Suck it up,"
Mm-hmm.
because it was amazing. And then I went back and took dance lessons for a couple months this year. So,
Excellent, congratulations.
yeah, thanks.
That's awesome. Now, how long was it before you were back at work? Because you thought it would be about 2 months,
It was a year.
but a year. Okay.
Yeah. So I got my
But
job
still, that
entails.
was after the prognosis was you might not be going back.
Right. It was, you may not walk and you might have to
Mm-hmm.
come up with all these different options. And that to me just didn't, I'm not one to ever take an excuse. And so I'm like, this is not going to define me. You can't say, even if I was a complete spinal cord injury, I would have found a
Mm-hmm.
way. And like, my brain had already come up with 5 different ways I could still get into work. And even if I had to use, like, if I was a permanent wheelchair, complete spinal cord, I come up with different ways I could make it happen, because that's how my brain works. It's okay. Well, I might have this limitation, but how can I
Mm-hmm.
work around it and still make it work? Because I'm not going to be stuck in my parents' house for the rest of my life. That's just not an option.
And what was what was it like returning to work after
Ooh,
being out for a year and having gone through from some people that I've spoken with that have gone through the physical therapy that happens after severe injuries. That's almost sometimes seems almost as bad as the experience of the original injury.
yeah, it
It's
depends.
because it's that ongoing, it's just the ongoing discomfort,
Hmm.
to put it mildly, of
Yeah,
constantly needing to push yourself and push your body in order to be able to get back to as normal life as possible.
yeah. It's so going back to work, I flew back with my mom because I was staying with them. My house has stairs, and of course, I couldn't do stairs because I broke both of my feet. So one foot I couldn't walk on it until January of the following year. So what is that, like 6, 7 months after the accident? I still wasn't able to even try walking until I think that's 7 months after. So I had to be able to do stairs. I finally got cleared to come back, and it was the best reception. Like they met me at the gate, they were just so excited. And then I got to go down and see them. We work kind of ramp level down here. And so they swiped
Okay.
me in and I got to see them. And it was a super busy time of day, but there was like this huge line of people that I really wanted to see. Like I just wanted to give them all a big old hug because they were so worried about me and so caring and thoughtful. And they were thinking, oh my God, she's still alive, and it was just a beautiful time. It was amazing. And then I didn't go back to work until July of 2020. And so it was great, but it was still 2020 at an airport. Our offices were split, so
Mm,
we didn't see the other half of the group until I didn't really even get to see them until I think it was September or so, because then we combined the offices. But it was
okay.
it was great. Like they're like, "Oh, well, you're gonna train with this guy," and I'm like, "Oh, the guy who took my position when I left, huh?" And I gave him a hard time. It was good, but I basically spent the entire day walking around talking to everybody because I got all my logins working, and I'm like, "There, I can log in. I don't have anything to
Hmm.
do. I'm shadowing. I'm gonna go talk to everybody." So
Yeah.
it was amazing, and it still is. I still get to see people that I hadn't maybe seen yet or anything, just because COVID came right at the same time I'm trying to go back to work, and a lot of
Hmm.
those people, they took leave or they quit or retired early or things like that. And so it's been fun keeping up with everybody and going along the whole journey because they were very, very close, either virtually or physically. Some of them flew out to Dallas where I was recovering and came
Hmm.
out to visit. So it was amazing family.
Good. Yeah. So coming back to the timeline on
Hmm.
this, so you literally fall out of the sky in this plane crash
Yes.
in June 2019. You're through a year of recovery. You're back at work, still in the midst of the COVID pandemic. And then when we met earlier this year, just a couple months ago, now you're out on the speaking circuit, speaking about your experience teaching, helping others. What? How did that come about? After so you got back to work, then you started writing about your experience and speaking
Hmm.
about it. How did that? How did you have the opportunity to do that?
I got in touch with actually someone through United Airlines, through people that I knew
Okay.
that had done like a collaboration book. And she reached out to me, and actually, her dad came over and was like, "Hey, would you ever write about your story? Like, if it's too sensitive, don't worry about it. But if you would you ever write about it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about writing a book. It's just there's so much to write about. I haven't quite got it all ironed out in my head yet." So he said, "Well, my daughter has written in this book, and it's a very, like, you write one chapter and it's with other people. And so, can I give you her information?" I said, "Yes, of course." And so she sent me the information, and it's like, you write one chapter, 3,000 words. That's your story, and it's in a book with everyone else. So you split the cost. And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm a terrible writer, at least I'm only spending this much money instead of publishing my whole book and, ruining everyone's ideas of how well I write. And so I went ahead and did that, and that's how I got published. And then through that process, I got in touch with Matt and Jen Koffel's speaking program that they
Okay.
have, Leading Voice,
Hmm.
and went through that and learned about it because I enjoy sharing my story because it inspires people. It lets them know, hey, if you can do that, I can do whatever it is that I'm dealing with? And how did you face, when doctors were like, you're not going to walk again, let's just, stick a rod up your leg because it doesn't even matter. Like, it's not a big deal. And me going, no, that's not how this works. Like, how do you deal with that and overcome it to where,
Mm-hmm.
and then still have a positive mindset about it? Because, yeah, there were medical mishaps. I got thrown into a drug induced coma because the doctor didn't listen to my mom. So there's plenty of
Oh,
random things like that, that it's
yeah.
just like, you know what?
Holy cow.
This is kind of, it shouldn't have happened, but I'm fine and everyone else
Yep.
is fine. And honestly, I go back to the hospital floor that I was on. It was the neuro floor. And I met those nurses again, and they're like, "We use your story all the time. Like, that is never, ever again happening on our watch. Now we know what to look out for. Now we know what the problem was." And so I'm like, I'm fine. But all of these nurses that worked with me on that floor, now they work in, Arizona, New York, all over the place. And they're never going to let that happen again. Like, next time they see
Yeah.
anything similar, that patient is not going to have to deal with what I had to deal with. And I'm not any worse for the wear. I'm fine. I dealt with it. It wasn't fun for my mom. That was a
Mm,
bad time. But
sure.
kind of
Yeah.
taking those things and being like, okay, how can I make that a positive thing? And how can I acknowledge the fact that yes, it was bad, not be saying, oh, it's fine, it's no big deal, but saying, yes, it was a severe gross oversight. It was a problem. This is something that now I need to maybe pay more attention to, be more of
Mm-hmm.
my own personal advocate for my own health, and then but also not keep that bitterness, because it's not going to do you any good. Like, keeping that this person did this to me mindset is just gonna, all you're doing is hurting yourself. They don't care. They're living their life happy and free, and you're here going, this person tried to ruin my life.
Yeah. That's a powerful perspective.
Yeah.
That, it's we yeah, how to drop that and move forward
Hmm.
and be able to achieve more in life. Because I want to bring the picture back up that we had at the beginning. Um, because for anyone, for those of you that have joined us since we started, so here's a picture of Joy on stage, and I got to see you speak. That was how we met. You were speaking on stage.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, how tall are you?
I haven't measured myself since the accident, but I'm supposed to be 5'4".
5'4". So think about this as you're watching this. Think about this. Joy is 5 feet 4 inches, and she's a powerhouse on stage. And the story that you were just telling about how um, it's just, it gets me choked up just thinking about it, and about how you went through, the attitude that you had going through this whole experience, and the way that you just like constantly standing strong. And in meeting you, it's like, here's this powerhouse petite gal that is like not taking no for an answer, and is like, no, you're not going to tell me I'm not going to dance again. What do you mean I'm not going to fly again? 6 weeks later, you're back up in a plane. You work in the air, you work in the aviation industry, so you're around
That's my
planes
life.
all the time. It's your life.
Hmm.
It's like, wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I won't say that there weren't those flashbacks and those moments of
Yeah, of course.
like,
Yeah.
being on the medevac was for some reason traumatic for me. And so driving into the airport to go into work, when I see an ambulance driving into work, is just kind
Hmm.
of, the first time was just like, oh, I was not ready for that feeling. Like,
Yeah.
that is not a good, pit of your stomach, like, run away and hide under a blanket sort of feeling. And so I was like, what is making me do that? And I realized it was triggered by the ambulances driving into signature flight support to most likely pick up some passenger and take them to the hospital. And so I had to kind of work through that, pray through that, realize that I'm having that emotion, letting myself feel it, because it's a very valid emotion. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to tell myself, well, you're stupid or you're weak or you just can't handle it, because for one, I know better. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not going to let myself lie to myself. But realizing, okay, well, this is the problem, and then how can I help that? And so every time I would see that, I would go, you know what? I'm okay. It was a good experience. It put me where I needed to be. And then kind of rewire that emotion to where now I'll still see it and I'll be like, oh yeah, that feeling. Okay. Or that memory. And so it's just like a flicker of a memory versus a gut punch sort of a thing. So letting myself kind of feel those emotions and then try to healthfully redirect them. Because I don't want
Hmm.
to, I know I have a tendency to just block it off and just be like, no, you know what, suck it up. You're a leader, you're a manager, you got your master's for crying out loud. Like, big girls don't cry. Yes, they do. Like, but realizing, okay, it's okay to cry. Don't bawl your head off all the time. Like, get control of your emotions, but allow yourself to have emotions. Like,
Sure. Can't deny it.
life.
Can't
No. And
stuff
when
it,
you do,
as
you're
I've
just
heard
hurting
it said.
yourself.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
How has this affected your role at work, or how you bring yourself into workplace, into you're interacting with other people in their lives as a leader, as an influencer?
It's helped a lot just trying to build those connections, understand where everyone's coming from, especially after the pandemic, because as we know, everyone has a different experience. And so trying to stay sensitive to what's going on in your family. I don't know. Like me on the outside, if I wear slacks, you can't see that I wear a brace on my leg. And you can't really tell that anything's really wrong with me, which I would argue nothing's wrong with me. But you can never tell that I had to go through what I went through. In the same way, you don't, if you look at someone, you don't know what they're going through. And so I try to keep that in the forefront of my mind instead of, picking up the phone and saying, hey, get your act together, board this plane, what's going on? Like, why are you so slow? Taking a time and, building that relationship, just being like, hey, how's your day going? Okay, great. Here's what we need to do. And actually caring about how their day goes instead of just using it as a term to make them think I care because people know the difference between how's your day going? Okay, great, cool. Well, how about you do this versus how's your day going? Oh, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. Or oh, I'm so sorry. And really trying to make those personal connections because I feel like that's what helped in my recovery. It also helped in my leadership and being able to identify with the people that I work with. And I after doing that, I can really tell now they want to work with me. They
Hmm.
want my life easier, whether it's a subconscious thing or a conscious thing. If I ask the ramp agent leads on, because I talk on the radio to really everybody. But if I call them and say, hey, we need to do this, they'll be like, oh yeah, we're right on it. And sometimes people they haven't built a relationship with, they'll ignore them and tell me later. And I'm like, you can't be ignoring people. Like we're the same level, but at the same time, we built that relationship. And so they know I'm
Hmm.
not trying to get them to go at every single job and you need to do this right now when we only have, five people on an overnight shift parking two planes and I'm asking them to do one other thing. It's not going to happen. So they know that I respect their time, I respect their leadership and their physical abilities. And based on that respect, they work well with me. I work well with them. We care about each other. And the operation in my life goes way easier because I don't have to pull teeth to get power plugged into a plane because I know they're going to actually do it. And sometimes, I still keep an eye on it to make sure it happens because
Hmm.
if we're too busy, maybe they forgot because guess what? They're human. So then I keep an eye on it. And if a reasonable amount of time has passed, I follow up. But it's not a, why didn't you do this, you lazy bum
Mm.
sort of idea.
So it's how the follow up happens has a big impact
Yeah.
as well.
Right. I'll be like, "Hey, I know you guys are busy. Did anybody get that hooked up?" I have a camera. I know if they hooked it up or not. But that's my way of saying. And then they'll go, "Oh, oops," and then they'll go hook it up. Generally,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like how you see yourself in relation to other people because I see myself in relation to, or I try to see myself in relation to everybody as pretty much equal because yes, I'm an operations manager, so I work overnights, and as overnights, I'm the only one there for United on the overnight. So anything goes through me, like security issues, a fox running across the runway, like any of those things, I have to know who to call, what to do, and so like I could say listen to me because I'm the big cheese, but I choose not to because that's not who I am and that's not what gets the response that I want from my team if I just go do
Hmm.
that because it doesn't help anybody. And nobody likes to be talked to like that. Like
True.
you can
Very true.
remember when you're a cart pusher at Walmart, you don't want to be talked down to any more than you do if you're the CEO. Like, we're all humans. So I generally try to talk to them all pretty much the same.
Jumping around some more again. Uh, when we first met, you were speaking some about the Cooper method.
Mm-hmm.
Would you share some more with us? Because I just thought that was brilliant. How you've taken from your experience with the plane crash, but also as a leader in the workplace, and being able to articulate that really clearly in a powerful way that helps others.
Yeah, so the Cooper method, it kind of has evolved and is still evolving over time, but it's
Mm-hmm.
basically the method of waking yourself up and making yourself kind of become alert to things. And so, in a physical way, as a speaker, before you get on a stage, just kind of like tapping your legs and hitting your, all the way down from like your calves up to your thighs, and then tapping your arms. And basically, it's to kind of wake up those blood vessels and nerves so that you're ready to go. Like, you're alive, you're alert, you're ready to go. And they called it the Cooper method because that's actually how I got feeling and motion back in my legs, because it was a
Okay.
lot of rubbing and tapping and waking those nerves up. And so when we're talking about, oh yeah, just jump around, tap yourself, try to wake everything up, and I was like, actually that does work. Like, that's kind of how I woke up and was able to walk again. And so they said, oh, we ought to call this the Cooper method. And it's basically, yeah, you're kind of getting yourself in that it's game time mode. Let me wake everything up and do it in a physical way as well as a mental way, versus just being like, all right, I'm mentally awake. And then you get up, you try to walk, and you forgot that you sat on your leg and now your foot's dead. Use that
Mm-hmm.
for a visual analogy. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's the Cooper method. Just slap
so
yourself. That's it. Don't do that. Don't
slap
listen
yourself
to me.
before someone else does, right?
Honestly, some people.
Oh, I love that. But that was a huge part of your recovery.
That was a lot of the physical therapy that we
Mm-hmm.
did, was a lot of massage. And there were times where, kind of going back to the whole being in the plane and using my fingers to crawl up the buttons, I actually used that a lot in my recovery, because I thought, if the muscles aren't attached, but I can still stare at something and get the nerves to wake up and do what I need them to do,
Yeah.
why can't that work on my foot? And so I would look at my foot, and that's how I kind of got the toe to start moving, because like my brain was trying to tell those nerves, and I'm sure there's a scientific explanation for it of, maybe firing those neurons or whatever to get those to work. But I would just look at my foot and go, okay, move
Mm-hmm.
up. And then I tried to, lift my leg above the bed laying down, and it would not go, even though I had like a little bit of triggering. And with the muscles and nerves, it's called triggering, and when you can feel the nerves trying to tense up a muscle.
Okay.
So they're like, well, there's nerve triggers there. There's little vibrations, but it's not actually kicking in that muscle to get it to lift your leg up. So one night I thought, you know what? Gravity is just too heavy. I can't do gravity. How about half gravity? Like, I took physics in college. And so I practiced sliding it up a pillow, like on my side, up a pillow at an angle, maybe 45 degrees, about halfway. And it started moving. And I thought, ha ha ha, this thing is done for. So I kept, practicing kicking it up just an incline. Like, that's all I did. And then the next day, my physical therapist came in and she goes, all right, let's try to do the leg lifts again, knowing, one of these days it's going to kick in. And sure enough, like, I was able to move it just maybe like a half of an inch. Like, it wasn't much, but she was just like, you did it. And it's because I was able to kind of look at that and be like, this is where I want you to go. And I'm going to get you there. And I might, if I keep kicking against gravity, I'm not going to get anywhere. It's too strong. So how can I like rearrange how I can still meet the same end? And you can use
Mm-hmm.
that leadership as well. It's like, you can't beat a dead horse. It doesn't do any good. If you want it to
Yeah.
go, get a new horse. Find a new plan, find another way to make this still work. And it may not be your original thought. Like, keep
Well,
keep it creative.
and also what you sparked a thought for me was as well. It's very, and from a leadership perspective, it's also about what you focus on
Mhm.
is what you get, and to focus your team to make sure you keep your team focused, and then allow them to figure out how to make the toe move. so to
Right.
speak.
Or like if you have a goal, like you're focusing on that goal and you think
Hmm.
that goal is going to take steps 1, 2, and 3. And so you keep trying those steps, but you're not reaching your goal.
Hmm.
So, what's the definition of insanity? Like you can't keep trying that. It's probably not going to work. Now, maybe it will over time, but it's going to maybe take a little bit longer. But how can you restructure the way that you're thinking and go, okay,
Yeah.
I need to do this on an incline. Maybe do this a little bit slower than we were planning or take a different step sideways.
Hmm.
But you always keep your eye on that goal and then you maybe adjust the steps in between.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's like, have you been following me around? It's like, oh, those
No.
steps don't work. It's like, oh, you mean change step 3? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like learning to dance.
Oh,
Like my toes don't work. I can't get up on my toes when you're dancing, and so I have to learn how to dance on my heels. And if you're doing heel
oh,
turns
I
and
never
heel
thought.
spins, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it misses people up. It's amazing. But that's the way I can spin is on my heels. And so I had to adjust it. And no, it doesn't look as pretty, and no, it doesn't flow across the ground as it used to, but it gets the job done. I can spin, we can complete the steps and everybody's happy, especially
Hmm.
me.
Especially because you danced it
Yeah,
after.
exactly.
You
Because I
just
know what I
strike me
had
as
to
the.
go through to get there.
Yes. Yes. So are you continuing to speak? What are you working on? How are you working with people now? Because like you have
Yeah,
so much going on.
I do have a lot going on. Like I said, I'm currently recovering from surgery, so I'm
Hmm.
grounded for probably at least another 2 months, but virtual
Mm,
is all the way. And thankfully, that is one good thing that came from the pandemic is there's lots of virtual speaking opportunities. I'm also writing my full
yes.
book. I
Oh,
published the
good.
book before, which is just a
Hmm.
chapter, and it went really well. And so I thought, hey, I can write. And I've always wanted to put together the full story, like including the National Guard's perspective. And I've gone back to Alaska twice now.
Oh,
I love it. I get with the
yeah.
guys. It's going to be an awesome book. It's going to be
So
amazing.
you're
And
so you're
so,
adding in the perspective of the different people like National
oh yeah,
Guard, some of the healthcare professionals. Oh, wow.
yeah.
It just gets
So
giving me
no,
chills
it's
just
gonna be
thinking.
great. Like my last trip up there a couple months ago gave me so much
Hmm.
food for that, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be amazing because it's such a different perspective than a normal memoir where it just comes from one direction. But I'm like, I gotta put those guys their perspective, and then also,
Yeah.
like my mom's perspective. She got a phone call that said, "Well, one of the girls is dead, and we don't know which one."
Oh,
Who does that?
oh my gosh.
Like, who does that? So a lot of her journey, and she remembers stuff that I don't from that first week. That was very
Hmm. Yeah.
pivotal, of course. And so yeah, I'm working on that during recovery and working on getting keynote speaking set up in the future and also kind of just honing that a little bit. I'm also getting my project management certificate because why not? Like,
Because why not? Yes. Through
yeah,
Project
because I'm
Management Institute.
crazy. Yes.
Excellent. Good for you. That is
So
a phenomenal
all I got to do
program.
is a little bit of study and a test, and I love tests. So we'll see.
We seem to have quite a history of being able to just absolutely crush the biggest tests life can throw at you.
You know, I always enjoyed tests. Like I took the ASVAB military test just for
Hmm.
fun. And I flunked it and I
Just for
felt
fun.
terrible
Oh,
about
now
myself.
that's just not right.
It was
We
terrible.
were
I shouldn't
required
have
to
done
take
it.
it when I went through high school.
Oh, really?
It's just, yeah.
Ah. That way they can know
It's
who
an
to scratch off
in
the
hindsight, it
draft
was a
list.
phenomenal test at the time. It's like
Oh, yeah.
you want us to do what?
I had been out of school for like 2 years. That's my
Hmm.
excuse. And my sister was taking it, and I was like, ooh, can I take it too? Yeah, it wasn't good.
Excellent.
But it inspired me to go back to school. So,
Excellent. Then we've got that. So we've got, as you're watching this, reach out to Joy at joycooperpilot.com.
yeah. I'd love to hear any
Whoop,
comments,
wrong.
questions, concerns,
Yes.
input. Book me for a talk. That'd be fantastic.
Joy is great from stage. I can testify to that. That's why I wanted to have you on the show. It
Yeah,
was
thanks.
just such a powerful presentation to hear your story and then how you relate that to, how do we overcome trauma? How do we build resilience? How does that
Mhm.
affect us as leaders? And from leadership standpoint, how do we, help others through that as well? Because people on our team are, like you said, they're dealing with stuff. It's true.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
big point in COVID where It gave people that hadn't had it before a front seat to how different stuff's happening to different
Mhm.
people and how people respond differently to the same
Yeah.
circumstances. So,
Yep.
my gosh.
No, great lessons learned.
No, wait a minute. Got the wrong ticker going there. Wrong Chiron. Had Steve on last week. Awesome
I'll have
person.
to
I'm
look him up. Now I've got
gonna
his
yes.
website.
Actually, let's see if I can connect you to, because he might have an opportunity for you
Nice.
to speak on his podcast. But Joy, I really appreciate you being with us today and sharing your story, your insights. This has been
It was
phenomenal.
great.
As you're
Thank you.
watching this, Joy Cooper, joycooperpilot.com. More for the
Yeah.
story. Have Joy speak at your events. And there's so much more to
I've got
learn.
my book on there too if anybody is a book person. So knock yourself
It
out.
is worth it. I
Not
have it.
really.
I've read the story. It's just like, my gosh. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to your full book, the full story that
That
includes
one's
everybody
gonna be
else's
fun.
perspectives as well. Yes,
Mhm. Yeah.
it will.
No, it's gonna be great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And Joy, if you can, just for a couple minutes, I have a couple questions post show for you. As you're watching this, if you're watching this on replay, this is live stream. So this is 21st Century Television, live and interactive. If you missed the live, post your comments, post your questions. That gets back to, your comments are shared with Joy. And if you've got a question, we'll make sure it gets answered for you as well. Joy, thanks for being on Wolf's Watch. And you watching this, thank you for being part of the conversation. I'm Wolf, and I will see you on the trail.